Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to your Lunch Break Live. My name is Ivana Hurrenque if you're new here, and if you're not, thank you for coming back. Today is Wednesday, November the 3rd. I had to look down and look at that date for a minute. It seems a little crazy. It's already here. And today I am joined by a very special guest. You might recognize her. This is Anna Slive Harwood. Now, that name might sound familiar to you if you are familiar, especially with the SEC, with sports in general. And that is because she is the daughter of the late Mike Slive. Now, today we're going to be talking about the Mike Slive Foundation Beyond Blue event that is happening next week, some of the really cool things that are going to be happening at that event, and also talk a little bit about Mike Slive himself, about his legacy, and how his name is living on. So, Anna, thank you for joining us today to tell us a little bit about this event and just about your dad in general.
Oh, thank you. I'm so honored to be here. It's wonderful.
Well, I want to give a couple of quick notes about this event. So if anybody watching is saying, oh my gosh, that's already coming up, I want to go or I'm interested, this is the details here. So the Beyond Blue event, this is for prostate cancer awareness, prostate cancer research. This is on November 11th, which, believe it or not, is next Thursday, 5:30 p.m. Central Time, and it is going to be held at Protective Stadium. So again, that's November the 11th. That's next Thursday, 5:30 at Protective Stadium. Now, this event, there are going to be, I'm sure, a lot of notable names that you recognize there as well. And ESPN's own Laura Rutledge is going to be emceeing that event. So, Anna, I know we have some questions about the event, but one thing I kept looking at was all of the items that are up for auction at that event. And there are some really cool things here. So first, tell us a little bit about Beyond Blue, what the message for this event is, and then we can get into some of the fun stuff.
Sure. Well, one of my board members came up with the name, which I think is really cool because the whole idea is that we are going to move beyond the blue ribbon and cure prostate cancer. So someday the next generation is never going to even have to deal with it. So this benefit raises money for the Mike Slive Foundation. And our goal is to continue to fund research, which we can get into and talk about, and also make sure that we can still run the programs that we need to, using college sports and using my dad's name to help educate men and their families about their risk of prostate cancer. So we just try to make it fun. We try to make the medicine taste good. If we're going to have to talk about something as potentially uncomfortable as prostate cancer can be when you're talking to men, let's do it using college sports celebrities. Let's do it using really fun auction items. Let's not have a sit-down dinner. Let's make it a really big, fun, high-energy cocktail party. And that's really what the event is all about.
Well, and it's funny the way you word that, because like you said, this is never a comfortable conversation. And then you're putting a conversation about prostate cancer, which is something that so many men live with. We know that 1 in 8 men and 1 in 7 African-American men will be diagnosed in their lifetime with prostate cancer. There are 3.1 million men in America who are battling prostate cancer. It's not a fun conversation, but the way you frame that of saying, look, we're going to talk about it with these high names in sports at a fun cocktail party with some really cool items up for auction, it just kind of reframes that conversation and makes it a little bit less dreadful to talk about, really.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a really important point. 1 in 8 men is a statistic that most people don't know. And, women, there's 1 in 8 women that are going to get breast cancer. But you and I talk about it. We're women. We just treat this kind of thing differently than men do. And that's part of what I've learned over my time and being part of the foundation is men don't talk about this stuff. And they don't go to the doctor unless there's something wrong. And I tell people all the time, if my father were standing here right now, he would say to you, part of the problem is if you wait until you're actually symptomatic of prostate cancer, it can be too late. And that's why so much of what we do is in the education and outreach field, because men don't know all the stats and they don't know all the numbers. But with 1 in 8, you are pretty much guaranteed to know a family member, a friend, somebody in your life who has been or will be affected by prostate cancer. And it's a cancer that can be detected early and can be treated when caught early. And I think we've all had enough cancer in our lives to know that there's some that you can't even check for. And this is one you can. So let's get that message out there. And if I can get Laura Rutledge and Paul Feinbaum and Bruce Pearl and all these people to help us share that message, I think you're going to get men to listen a lot more than if I say it all day long, which I'm happy to do, but I don't think they want to hear it from me. So.
No, and that's a good point, talking about just the screening process here, how women are often more proactive about their health than men are. And that's something that I think most of us have probably seen with somebody in our life that we love. And 1 in 8 men is too many, 1 in 7 African American men is too many. And something that is interesting about the foundation in some of your notes here, you have that when caught early, the 5-year survival rate of a man diagnosed with prostate cancer is nearly 100%. So that means if you catch it early, the chances are you're going to be okay. So let's catch it early. Let's not face any of those more grim statistics there.
100%. My father's journey, which some people do know, obviously, because he was well known in Birmingham as commissioner of the SEC, his journey started in 1996 with the diagnosis of prostate cancer. But his cancer actually metastasized to his bones, to his spine. And we don't ever want another man or another family to have to go through that advanced prostate cancer. And men, in a perfect world, men should die from something else. If that prostate cancer is caught early through a simple PSA blood test, nothing to be afraid of, literally takes 5 minutes during an annual exam. If prostate cancer is caught early, men can go on and live a healthy, productive, fun life and die from old age whenever the time is right. So that's part of the goal, 100%.
Well, and let's talk about your dad for a minute. So for those who don't know, Mike Slive did pass away in 2018 at the age of 77. And he was well known for being the commissioner of the SEC, for being the former commissioner of Conference USA as well, and just being well known and really working his way up through the college football arena, through college football programs. And he was also, I believe, an attorney as well. So had a lot of friends in the legal community, especially the legal community here in Birmingham. So he really did seem like a man with a lot of branches in a lot of different parts of the state, parts of the South, and of Birmingham.
Yeah. So, my dad used to say that they were Northerners by birth and Southerners by choice. He and my mom absolutely loved, and my mom still lives here, loved living here in Birmingham. It became a very special place for them. And we did move around a lot when I was a kid. His career always was either in law or sports, and often the two intersected. People don't even know he grew up as a meat cutter in upstate New York. He was the first man in his family to ever go to college, came from a real working class background, but had an amazing career. And I think Birmingham welcomed him, and the SEC welcomed my parents in a way that nobody could have ever imagined. And they absolutely love living here. But it's funny because you mentioned when you and I were talking before the show that you're a UAB grad. People forget that the Slive family's relationship with UAB goes all the way back to the formation of the Great Midwest Conference back in the early 90s. So, they've always had a relationship with Birmingham for quite a long time. And I think my dad I think the SEC was the perfect place for him at the perfect time. He was definitely different than previous folks here. An upstate New York guy, a Jewish guy, different, not from the South. It was an unusual hire, I think, was what a lot of people were saying at the time. But he was a wonderful leader, and probably just got in at exactly the right time for what the SEC needed at that time.
Well, and something too that we should note is the Mike Slive Foundation was actually formed before he passed away. And so tell us a little bit about that, how he and Ed Meyerson formed the Mike Slive Foundation, and a little bit about why he wanted to do this. Again, this was not something that you and your family dreamed up after he had already passed away to honor him. This was something that he could have a hand in starting.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought that up. Ed Meyerson just retired, a very prominent local attorney here in Birmingham and a dear family friend of ours. And Ed had the original idea for this foundation. It was not my dad's idea. My dad hadn't even really gone public with his prostate cancer story when they first started talking. And Ed has 5 grandsons, and his father had prostate cancer. And he came to my dad and said, I want to create an organization here in the state of Alabama that is focused on prostate cancer because nobody's talking about it. And I don't want my grandson someday to have to deal with this. And I always love what Ed said. He said, nobody knows the name Ed Meyerson out there, but everybody knows the name Mike Slive. And let's use your story about prostate cancer and your name and your connections to start educating men. And that's how we formed. And my dad was with us for the first 18 months. When we started the organization, he was the president of the board. He was instrumental in how we were built. Ed really pulled the initial board members together, and it's Ed's vision that we just wanted to execute. And I think we do have a very unique niche, because I don't think there's a lot of people out there that are using college sports to talk about prostate cancer. And there's no other organization in the entire Southeast that is dedicated at all to only prostate cancer. So that gives us a real opportunity to not only raise money for this event, but to educate men and make sure that we continue that message of early detection. So I think my dad, before he passed away, had a very good understanding of our trajectory and where we could go as an organization. And I remember he said to me at one point when he was pretty sick, he said, I never, ever imagined that my legacy could be more than just college sports. But I think he really understood that this is college sports is incredible, and he was dedicated to it. But it's an amazing feeling when you work on something and you think, I'm saving a life, maybe 10, maybe 50.
Do you think that he would be proud of the direction that the Mike Slive Foundation has taken since his passing in 2018?
Yeah, I think he would be overwhelmed. I think he would be overwhelmed by the support that people give, financially and otherwise. Like when we do talk about those auction items, that's all because of Mike Slive and his connections. And when I call somebody and ask them to do something to support the Mike Slive Foundation, the answer is always, absolutely. I loved your dad. I love Ed Meyerson. What can I do? How can I help?
Well, I want to take a break from some of the more heavy conversation here and talk about some of the fun stuff, and that is some of these auction items. Now, you mentioned all of the ties to college sports here and using college sports as a way to get into this conversation about prostate cancer. And some of these items, I have to say, I think you're going to get a lot of people who come out to bid on them and might learn while they're there, even if that was not their intention. So some of the items that I had to make a quick note of because they caught my eye were a dinner with Paul Feinbaum, which I'm sure would be very interesting. Tickets to the college national championship game, a bowl made from the oak from Toomer's Corner, from the Toomer's Oaks, and basketballs that are signed from both Alabama basketball coach Nate Oates and Auburn basketball coach Bruce Pearl. So those are just some of the ones I jotted down. I know that there are more, but those are some pretty big ticket items that I think super fans of Alabama and Auburn will be very drawn to.
Yeah. And, Paul is on our advisory board, and he and my father were very close friends. And when I called Paul and said, listen, would you do this? I know it's a tall ask, but he said, absolutely, I'd be happy to. And, he loves Birmingham, and some lucky group. I think it's 4 people to have dinner with Paul. So 2 couples. Can you imagine sitting there for a couple hours drinking wine and talking privately to Paul Feinbaum about his views of college sports? I mean, I don't think it gets any better than that. So, and the Oaks, the bowl that's made from the Toomer's Corners Oaks, that's one of a kind. That's priceless, literally. I don't know that there's another one out there. So it's pretty exciting. There's some great stuff. We're really happy. And the SEC is always very generous. We've got tickets to the SEC football championship. We even have a package going down to their basketball championship in Tampa in the spring. And SEC luggage, which, believe it or not, is always a really hot commodity. You can't buy it online. It's like custom SEC luggage. So it's fun.
Well, look, for all of our fans who are traveling to go to these games, whether it is football, basketball, baseball, or any of the other sports, I can see where that would be a draw there. Now, I also know at this event that the foundation is honoring Ed Meyerson at the event. So tell me a little bit about that.
So this is our 5th anniversary this year. And, I really felt strongly that we had to honor Ed. And Ed is very humble, just like my father was. And it took multiple conversations for me to kind of nudge him out and say, listen, we want to do this year. And he said, no, it's not about me. And I said, you know what, but it is about you, Ed, because it was your idea to begin this foundation. And if my father were alive, he would say that on our 5th anniversary, there's no better person to honor than Ed Meyerson, because without Ed, I wouldn't have a job and we wouldn't have raised over $2 million to fund all these prostate cancer research grants and create these incredible programs that we're doing.
So I know that the goal is to eradicate prostate cancer, to make this, as you said, something that the future generations, that our kids won't have to worry about, our grandkids
Right.
will not have to worry about. So do you think that that you're getting close there? Do you think that the work you're doing is going to make a big dent in that research, in the awareness and more?
Yes, I think the simple answer is 100% yes. I think that we will cure prostate cancer in our lifetime. And I think that Ed's grandchildren, by the time they're in their 40s, hopefully will not have to be dealing with it, or will be doing something that is so simple to just get a shot and be done and call it a day. I really do feel that. I think the research grants that we have funded some incredible science already. And I know that with our education and outreach programs, the more men that we can get checked early and save those lives. So for us, it's always going to be about doing both. It's always going to be about funding the research and creating the education and outreach programs, because it still may take a few years. You know, it's not like we're going to find a cure tomorrow, although we all want to. So in the meantime, let's use this opportunity to educate men and tell them to go get checked.
Well, and something too that I wanted to mention is, again, these statistics here: 3.1 million American men living with prostate cancer. 1 in 8 men and 1 in 7 African American men will experience prostate cancer in their lifetime. And also that when caught early, the prostate cancer diagnosis is not a death sentence. When caught early, there is a nearly 100% chance of 5-year survival rate. Those are some big numbers and they bear repeating. And I know that cancer is a scary word, and as it should be. But if you can talk about it a little bit earlier, if you can go ahead and confront the possibility of that problem, then you might just have a very different ending there.
Yeah, and I think getting men to share their stories is something that we really push for. It is a very private, personal thing for men. In the past, there have been some very negative side effects of prostate cancer treatments, which the facts have changed and the technology has changed to the point where men can get treated and have a healthy, wonderful life moving forward and not have negative side effects. And so to me, making sure that survivors are sharing their story and they are letting other men know that, hey, I got checked. Like, for example, our friend Hatton Smith, who is beloved and well known as a UAB alum and a grad and helping to bring that football program back. Hatton had never shared his story. And we honored him 2 years ago at our Beyond Blue event. And people kept coming up to me saying, I had no idea Hatton was a survivor. And so for him to come and share his story publicly, it actually saved people's lives because it impacted them. And they thought, I probably should go get checked. And so it's so, so important for us to let people know. And, another fact that I love to share that a lot of people don't know is if you have a direct relative, a father, a brother who has prostate cancer, you are twice as likely to get it. And so for fathers who have sons, for grandfathers, it is really important for men to disregard that stigma and share that story, if not for their own kids, but for future generations.
Well, and one thing I want to note as well, it is 11:21. So that means that in the time that we have been on air here, that we have been live, there has been a person who has died of prostate cancer. Every 20 minutes, a man dies of prostate cancer. And I know that that's something that is kind of scary, is a little bit wild to even say out loud, but I think that it is important and it's something that puts it in perspective. In the time that you've been sitting here watching this video that you and I have been talking, somebody has died from prostate cancer. So a lot of work to be done there. The foundation is doing a lot of that great work, awareness and funding grants. So, Anna, if you had to say one thing about your dad, what would it be?
I would say that my father was one of the kindest, most empathetic men I have ever met.
And that is more important than all sports combined.
100%.
Anna Slive Harwood, thank you so much for sharing your story today, telling us a little bit about the Mike Slive Foundation. And I will just one more time read off those details. So the Beyond Blue event is on November the 11th, next Thursday, as crazy as that sounds. November 11th, 5:30 p.m. at Protective Stadium. I believe you can buy tickets online as well. We will make sure that we leave that information here for you to do so. So Anna Slive Harwood, thank you so much for your time. Everybody watching, thank you. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.